Oh, l'amour, Ron. Love is in the air, and welcome to the Magic Morning Wood Valentine's Day special, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Yeah. 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 Now that everyone's vomited. Yes, so we decided this time around, rather than do our traditional I Hate You Man special, we would actually we'd choose a couple of romantic films.
Yeah.
Films about love.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Mm.
That's the concept. There's not much
Okay.
else to it.
Right.
So why don't we begin with
But I think in our only the way that we could do it, we chose pretty like anti-romantic romance films.
Yes, and we didn't collude on this, but we also kind of came up separately with a couple of films that kind of work
Work well
thematically quite well.
together and together are like very much not entirely romantic romance films.
Right.
So
And
which I
about a
thought
lot of
was
the same themes as well, I guess.
right. Yeah, of course.
So what's first out the gate? What's yours then, Ron? What are we talking
So
about?
the first one I chose was 2012's Ruby Sparks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so written by Zoe Kazan and directed by Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Ferris,
Mm-hmm.
and starring Paul Dano and Zoe Kazan, and also featuring Annette Bening, Antonio Banderas, Chris Messina, Steve Coogan, one of our favorite Steve Coogan, Tony Trucks, Deborah Ann Wall, Elliot Gould, and Elia Shawkat. And Elia Shawkat actually was, I don't know if you, Elia Shawkat also was one of the band members in the Runaways.
Oh, okay. Which
Yeah,
character
yeah.
was she in this then?
One of the ones that never got any any lines or information
Oh,
about
okay.
her.
Okay.
She was one of the So I know her. She was from the show Arrested Development, and so she's actually a
Oh,
really
really?
talented, funny actress. But then I saw her as like she's in the Runaways. Oh, it's Elia Shawkat, and they like gave her like one line in the whole movie. I didn't even know what her character's name was. And then and then she showed up against in this
Who was she in
as
Arrested Development?
she was um the cousin, yeah, like the cousin that the what's his face, the kid, what's Jason Bateman's son,
Yeah.
the one who's what's his face, from Scott Pilgrim.
Yes, I
uh
forget his name, but I know
yeah,
what you
yeah,
mean.
anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, his cousin,
Oh,
who
right, the one they have
she was,
awkward.
she was the daughter of I can't remember his name right now.
I know exactly who you mean, though. I know exactly who you
Yeah,
mean. And people who watch the show will know, so that's fine.
right. But I'm making myself feel bad because I forgot his name. David Cross, David Cross's daughter.
Right, right,
Yeah. David Cross, yeah. David Cross and Ellen's wife.
right, right.
Yeah, whatever her face is. Yeah.
Ah,
So
okay, okay.
anyway,
So,
so she shows up in this movie as kind of like a fan of Paul Dano's character. So
oh, okay.
yeah.
Maybe in one of the
Um,
signings or something like that.
well, he's the one that he goes on the date with her, and then
Right.
yeah,
I thought she did look familiar.
that's her there.
That's where I know her from. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
No,
she was
she is.
also one of the Runaways
Good
too,
running.
except
Yeah, I didn't even notice.
yeah, she was so. I was like, what a waste of Elia Shawkat, because
Yeah, no, she's got quite good comic timing.
yeah. So I was
So,
excited to see that.
so
But
these
anyway,
two, Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Faris. I haven't seen it, but I know it is a film that people like a lot. They're famous for Little Miss Sunshine, right?
right. And so they're famous for those like kind of quirky, offbeat comedy drama kind of movies, which this
Right,
movie sort of falls into that sort of general category.
right,
Yeah, and of course, if you know anything about Paul Dano and Zoe Kazan, they're a real life couple,
right.
and they also do a lot of these types of kind of like independent, kind of quirky
Yeah.
movies, and they're so bad. So Zoe Kazan actually is the daughter, my granddaughter of Elia Kazan, who's
Ah,
one of
okay,
like
okay.
who's a
Yeah,
granddaughter,
yeah.
who's like one of the biggest directors of the of the golden age, right? So like directed
Well,
as
so
Streetcar Named Desire, that kind of stuff, right?
yeah,
So
it was I'm trying to think Kazan as well. Wasn't it in a few years back when they were naming like uh people who had won, I can't remember, lifetime at the Oscars, they were doing the Lifetime Achievement Awards or whatever, and they read out the lists of people who've won it before, and people were clapping, and there were a few people they deliberately didn't clap his name, right?
oh, was Elia
Because
Kazan?
yeah, because I think I correct. Sorry if I've got the wrong person. I think I'm right because he was someone who named names during the House of Un-American
Oh, really?
Deputies.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's quite possible. I think that sounds vaguely familiar, but I'd forgotten about that. But
yeah,
and so they're still sore at him about that, I guess.
yeah, yeah. I guess after all these years, yeah.
Yeah. So
So yeah, I remember. I kind of remember that he's a somewhat, yeah, like you said, once upon a time, like one of the most celebrated American directors, and now has a bit of a tarnished image,
right,
politically, at least.
right.
Um, and yeah, Paul Dano, I like Paul. Paul Dano is a he's good because he's I don't know if you saw that movie Love and Mercy where he plays Brian Wilson. Uh,
No, no.
really, really good. And it was interesting for me to see because prior to that, my image of Paul Dano was he's really good at playing fucking assholes that you don't like. Like in
Yeah.
There Will Be Blood, I suppose, is the classic unlikable Paul Dano role, right?
Which one? Sorry.
There Will Be Blood.
There would be like, yeah, of course, yeah.
Um, but then as Brian Wilson, he's really good. And it was the first time I think I'd seen him, and he was like, "Oh wow, he can actually be extremely likable and charismatic as well." So I do like a bit of Paul Dano.
Yeah, I think Paul Dano is quite versatile, and I think he's kind of definitely an underrated actor. I think
Yes,
he's
he's more
yeah,
versatile than people think. I think
mm,
because he started off kind of playing a variation on that same irritating character, that people
right.
realize he could
Yeah,
do something else, right?
yeah. So I'm glad he's had chances to do things like this. And interestingly, this was written by Zoe, so
Mm,
I probably assume it was probably written for him. So probably as a way to show his chops a little more, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. So basically, summary of this movie.
So,
Um,
had you seen this before? Or was this a
No, I hadn't. It was sort
okay?
of on my. I like Paul Dano and Zoe Kazan, and so it was on my list of one to watch movies. And so when
Have
we were
they
doing romance movies, this came up as like, oh yeah, maybe I'll get a chance to watch that this time.
have they been together in many things?
Uh, I I don't know that for a fact. I think it's more than once though, but I don't think
Okay,
they're always together. But I think they do things together sometimes. I
right.
said do.
Well done. Good for
Yeah.
you. By the way, we should
I'll have
address
to
the frog in the room. Ron is ill. Uh,
ribbit,
yeah,
ribbit. Yeah.
there
So
we go.
I have a little bit of a hoarse voice today. Mr.
Hang on.
Red. Yeah. So, yeah. So anyway, so just moving through that. So the summary of this movie:
A man of a
Paul
thousand
Dano,
voices.
Paul Dano plays Calvin Weir Fields. Very kind of pretentious name, I guess, which is he's a bit of a pretentious guy in this movie, where
Hmm.
he's a writer and he's written a couple books and he's quite celebrated, but now he's got writer's block, and so he hasn't written for a long time, and he doesn't know he's trying to write, but he always gets distracted by something and just doesn't know where to go, and his publisher is always bugging him for another next book, and he keeps pushing him off, and he doesn't really know what's going on. Which, interestingly, I'm sort of getting things confused in my head because I just watched the movie American Fiction, which actually has similar plot point in that case, in that where he's like a celebrated author that has is not being published these days. But anyway, so yeah, so anyway, so and Paul has just sort of recently broken up with someone who you meet halfway through the movie a little bit, but kind of a big breakup. And so he keeps and so it starts with him having dreams where he imagines, I guess for him, his perfect woman, his dream woman, uh, and then he uses as a sort of inspiration to start writing a book about her, and the character he names Ruby Sparks, and and little by little, like he starts some things, strange things keep happening where like he finds like an extra toothbrush in his house or like a pair of women's underwear in a drawer, and he doesn't know where they're coming from and stuff, and eventually it turns out that what he's writing is coming true, and he actually creates this woman out of thin air that he's created, and she becomes alive. And what he writes is exactly what happens. And so she comes to be, and he thinks thinks he's going crazy, but it turns out that she's really there. That's the scene we were talking about with Elia Shawkat, where he thinks he's going crazy, so he goes on this date with this kind of super fan of his, and then realizes that other people can see Ruby as well, and then realizes that he's not going crazy, but that it's some sort of magical power, I guess, right? But it's not really played off about being about magic or fantasy, or whatever. It's just sort of like this. It just sort of everyone kind of thinks it's like, wow, that's so weird, but it just becomes sort of like
it's
a
not,
thing,
it
right?
doesn't turn into like Bewitched or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah. But then um so he decides, that so it's like his perfect woman, and so he realizes that he doesn't want to control her, so he puts his writing away and he just like enjoys his happy life with her. But then, as with all relationships, he starts to get some things about her starts to get on his nerves, and so he starts to bring out his writing and just tries to suddenly change her a little bit, and so whatever he writes comes true, and so he starts changing her a little bit, and then he does a little bit. He makes her, she's kind of, he sees her kind of talking to another guy, and she gets kind of jealous. So he, writes that she only wants to be with him, and then she becomes like super clingy, and then he's like, no, it's too clingy. So now he's like, so he's trying to play, use his writing to kind of find the right balance of making this perfect woman, but all the while getting darker and darker and darker, because he's basically like controlling this woman like a puppet, basically, right? So and to the point where it spoilers, I guess, but the climax is where he basically like makes her basically behave like a puppet and shows her that she is his creation and he can make her do whatever he wants, and it gets quite dark, actually, quite really like a like dark scene. And then at the end he kind of realizes what a terrible person he's become about this whole thing. He releases her, and then she goes, I guess you don't really know what happens to her at first, and then he kind of goes on with his life, and then at the end he meets her, and she doesn't know who he is, and so it's the idea is that maybe it's going to start all over again, right? So
or it's a different woman,
or it's a different woman. Yeah, so
yeah.
That's true. I thought it was probably her, but that he had released her, and so that way he didn't. So she just didn't remember him. But yeah,
I wonder. That is, I mean, so I thought this film was quite good, actually. I was surprised that when it started, I didn't think I'd like it at all, because of Paul Dano's character. I thought, oh no, is this our main protagonist? He's going to be a lot to deal with. I thought I don't like this guy. But no, it turned out to be actually quite, and as you said, it has this cumulative effect. So when it gets towards, it gets pretty dark there, and I thought, wow, okay, I didn't expect that. That's good. And then if I do have a problem with the film at all, it
the
is
ending,
the ending, yeah.
Yeah. It was a little bit too happy at the end. I feel like that was almost like a studio tack on or something, because it didn't feel like it was genuine to the rest of the movie. I thought
Not at all. No,
bit.
It's almost, in fact, if you really want to start thinking about it, it becomes problematic in terms of its relation to the rest of the film. Because basically the message is, if you love something, set it free, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But then it's a very cake and eat it kind of
yeah, sure. It's like he sort of
fulfillment.
is like this ends up being this kind of horrible person, and
Yeah,
then it's almost he doesn't deserve redemption,
he's
but
rewarded for
ends up
it's
getting
like,
rewarded at
oh
the end. Yeah, so I thought it was
yeah,
a bit of a question mark for me at the end, that just that last
it
beat.
should
But
end bittersweet, right? It should be like,
yeah,
I've learned something, I fucked up, and I'm always going to regret this, but I've
sure.
got a second chance. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I was the same way. Yeah. So I thought I fully enjoyed the movie right up until that last minute, and I was like, wait, what? Yes, it was a little bit of a question mark. So
yeah, it's good. And obviously they're a real life couple as well, so but that doesn't necessarily always translate on screen, right? But I thought they were. There's something about the two of them that is actually fun to watch, right? It's really
yeah, they definitely have chemistry, real life chemistry. You can tell, right? So yeah.
and
She's so cute too, right? She's like she reminds me of
she's got a look,
uh
isn't she? She's got a.
yeah,
She does have
yeah,
a look.
yeah, she definitely has this kind of cute kind of persona,
Well, that's
and
the other
she's
thing.
very adorable and she's lovable a little bit.
I
So
was a little bit worried as well when she first turns up because I thought it was going to be the manic pixie dream girl thing,
right,
but it kind of.
sure,
But that's the point in a way, is it's kind of commenting on that, right? So therefore, it's not a problem, right?
right, yeah. She
And
reminds me a little bit of another Zoe, the Zoe Deschanel. It reminds me of her a little bit with that, this sort of like this kind
you
of
know, this could
cutesy.
almost be a parody of pick your Zooey Deschanel movie of choice, right? Because I'm
Right, sure, yeah, it is, yeah. So
also quite pleased to see, and this is an idea that'll get you fucked up if you didn't realize. They go and see Brain Dead
oh
and
yes,
drink
yeah.
shots. I think they say something like, "Let's drink shots every time there's a ghost." So, you know, thinking, okay, you're gonna be in a fucked up pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, they have brain dead here. I totally forgot about yeah, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was good,
that was
good
fun.
fun.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
they had a lot of
mm,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no. I don't know how much I have to say, like beyond that. Other than it is, yeah, it's good. Bit of a shame about the ending, but it doesn't negate the whole thing, right? It's
Right,
if you
sure.
can get over that. Um, yeah, and yeah. So if you have much to say about the floor is yours. I don't. I was quite surprised. Yeah, I was quite surprised how good it was, and yeah, I didn't expect it to be. I didn't know what to expect from this film at all, so I had no idea it was going to go there.
Mm. To be honest, I didn't either. I knew I liked the two of them, and I'd heard that it was a good movie, and then it was sort of it was romantic in nature, I guess, and so it
Hmm,
fit for a good today. And then I was watching, I was like, wow, this is actually. I
hmm,
was pleasantly surprised. It was way better than I expected it to be. It was a lot more. I was like, when you said let's do romance movies, kind of like romance movies can be boring in that they end up being kind of the same thing. You know, meet cutes and fall in love and then and problems and then they get back together. It's kind of this very tropey stuff. There's a lot of it's hard to do something interesting with this genre, I think. So I was happy that it ended up being a little more interesting than I thought it would be. And also this sort of storyline has been done before. The you know writing what you write comes true, that kind of thing.
hmm,
It's
hmm,
happened in
hmm.
other movies, but I thought they did it quite well. It was they did it in a new way, and
But they didn't
as well.
overdo it. That's the thing.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
They seeded it, and then when it needed to, that scene, it was like, oh, okay, you know. So it was, yeah, it was well handled. I
yeah,
thought Antonio Banderas was quite funny as well.
yeah.
Like in a very, for some reason, I think that's what I imagine Antonio Banderas is actually like in real life.
With the hippie.
Yeah, kind of making it's just very kind of exuberant and like you know. So
Yeah,
I thought that was he was quite funny. I mean, um,
yeah. I liked his
Elliot Gould
family,
was
and that.
Elliot Gould. I mean,
Yeah, of course, yeah. I
um,
liked and the end up bending is like that whole family, like in their house made around a tree and stuff. I thought was pretty
yeah,
amusing.
Steve
Steve
Coogan
Coogan's always fun to
doing
watch.
yeah, but he was pretty much doing his kind of thing that he does quite a bit, where he kind of parodies the more like womanizing side of his character, which I suppose he was kind of um notorious for at a certain point early on in his career, right? And then
In real life.
yeah, yeah, I think he was a bit of a player back in the
Oh,
day.
was he?
Yeah, and I think he enjoys kind of playing around with that a little bit.
No.
He does it in this, and he does it in well, he does it in the Trip films as well to a certain extent.
Right.
And
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, I've seen him doing it in quite a lot of things. Again, yeah, we've talked about him quite a lot in the show because we both have become um, Well, I've been a fan of him for years, but you've become quite a fan of him as well.
Yeah, over the
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so and I'm glad it wasn't. I mean, this very easily could have been like a just a romantic comedy or like a very light kind of fluffy thing. But I was so pleasantly surprised that they went dark and that they
Yes.
actually had something to say about it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's exactly the sort of film that you would totally put off someone watching if they had a poster for it with the people looking slightly arch on something like that.
right. Yeah, so
Fuck that movie. I'm not watching that.
yeah. I mean, it definitely. And I don't know about the marketing campaign, but I get the impression it was probably played off as like just a romantic comedy, right?
Hmm.
Which it easily could have been, but I'm glad they didn't go there. And and I think that probably Zoe Kazan herself is not probably a fan of straight up romantic comedies. I
Right.
feel like they like kind of more interesting things, right?
Yeah,
So
because it's certainly not a film that you would like if you were going on like a first date or something, and because it would bring up all these kind of questions a bit too early
sure,
in
yeah,
the relationship, right? Like
right, yeah.
make for an
Not
awkward
a first, not a
conversation.
fluffy first date movie, yeah. So
No, no.
yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, but I'm glad and it didn't shy away from the questions too. I mean, like this guy, this idea of control and status in a relationship and that kind of stuff. I'm glad it didn't shy away from those questions or about the repercussions and the ramifications of those types of things too. So
right.
yeah, so I was really pleasantly surprised by it. And I'm glad you liked it too. As I was watching, I always try to guess what's Clive going to think of this movie, right?
Mhm.
So I thought you might you could have gone either way on it. I thought because I feel like these types of movies sometimes you think they're a little bit too uh I don't know like I did you like Little Miss Sunshine?
I've never seen it.
Oh really? Okay,
Yeah.
you should see it. Yeah. So yeah, I like those
Well,
kind of
I'm
like
more likely to see it now that I've seen these two filmmakers, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm more because again, Little Miss Sunshine is probably I don't know anything about it, but I'm guessing it's probably one of those films that might be quite good, but might not have the not have been advertised or sold the right way, right? Because
right.
I
Yeah.
don't really know what to expect from that film at all. So
Right.
this is probably the best way to approach it as well, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I might
Yeah.
give it a go
It's
one day. I'll wait for you
yeah.
to choose it for some reason. You probably will. You'll get around to it at some point.
Yeah, sure. I really like Little Miss Sunshine a lot. So yeah, so I think it's a little bit of a different animal than this one, I think, but it definitely has the same kind of quirky, independent comedy drama kind of feel to it. So
Yeah, quirky. Yeah, um, that's the that's where you can go wrong, isn't it?
yeah, I know,
It's the
and
thin
that's probably
line. Yeah.
where you probably say like, no thanks, I'm not interested in quirky, right? So
Yeah, but sometimes, I mean, yeah, this is undoubtedly, you could say it is quirky. You wouldn't be wrong to say it's quirky, but it's just the right side of quirky, right?
right, yeah, of course, yeah. So yeah, okay,
Yeah,
so it's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So yeah, it was a good
yeah,
watch.
I
I
know.
glad I was pleasantly surprised for myself too. So good.
Yeah, and it's not a million miles away from our from my choice, our second film here, 1980s Bad Timing,
Mm.
by the late great Nicholas Roeg. And this is a film set in it's Vienna, isn't it? I think it's mostly
Yes.
set in with a there's a there's something to do with there's a bit of it in well there's a character that lives across the border in Slovakia or something like that. There's
Mm.
some stuff to do with border crossing
Right.
border
Yeah.
crossing scenes. But basically it's a Viennese set film, and Art Garfunkel is our star in a real huh, I can't imagine what Art Garfunkel fans thought of this film when
Yeah. Right.
it had quite the shock, I
Yeah.
think.
I'll bet.
I mean, yeah, what would be comparable, like Paul Simon playing like a concentration camp commander or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, and he's he's in an ambulance on the way to hospital, and it turns out that his girlfriend, as played by
Well, sorry to interrupt, but have you ever seen Carnal Knowledge?
yes, I have seen Canon Knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is I haven't seen it. Is it equally kind of like you
Well,
know, apart from
let's say he
his
doesn't quite do
reputation?
what he does in this film.
That's right.
That.
Okay, sure.
But no, I think when Canon Knowledge was new, that probably would have been a bit surprising as well, because it's quite for its time, it's a very frank film about sex, and it's exactly the sort of thing because it's Jack Nicholson in him, right? It's exactly the sort of thing you'd expect Jack Nicholson to do, but maybe not Art Garfunkel. It's quite a good film from what I remember. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Right. But he was also in Boxing Helena, right? Too. Was
Yeah, I'd forgotten he was in that. I don't remember the
yeah.
part.
I think he just has he's a doctor or whatever. So it seems like when he doesn't act that much, but when he is, it's always something to do with sexual perversions of some kind.
I think musicians like to go for interesting material, right, when they're
Yeah,
in
I guess, yeah.
beat when they're in films. Yeah. Anyway, so they're on way to the hospital, and Teresa Russell is OD'd. We're not sure. It seems like it's a suicide attempt, and enter Detective Harvey Keitel, and he's trying to kind of figure out what happened and why she took her life, if that's the case. And meanwhile, we get a whole bunch of flashbacks to, well, when Art Garfunkel's character first met. He's a what is he? He's a research psychoanalyst who also kind of works for the American military in some capacity, right? It's a little bit unclear exactly
what
he
he's
does.
doing, and yeah.
But his job has led him to also discover the identity of a man, as played by Denham Elliott, the character who's over in Slovakia, who may or may not be Teresa Russell's husband. Right? Certainly, he's an ex, but and I mean, I don't know how far we want to spoil, but certainly one thing which I'm happy to say is we never actually find out exactly what's going on there, right? Unless it went over my head. So yeah, so basically it's a kind of it's a
I really, I just want to say I thought that they were married, and I thought that was established that they were fully.
Could be.
That I thought that was the point, was that she was married the whole time, and that they were open in the relationship, or that they were just kind of like
I
living
don't know.
apart.
I got the feeling it wasn't cut and dried, but again, but that's the thing about this film, is there are lots of different ways you can interpret it, I suppose.
I didn't. I guess maybe my my assumptions just solidified to themselves as fact, because I could have sworn that was actually what was happening. But anyway, so okay.
What I suppose the reason I suppose I'm a bit not sure about it is because, to be more precise, I don't think they ever quite spell out why the US military have asked him to.
Yeah, that I didn't really get, but I did.
Yeah,
but I did think it was said that they were married. But
yeah, that's the bit I think. Because of that, I was wondering, what. So does that mean, because there's also this, if you remember, there's a lot of talk about at one point, Art Garfunkel's talking to his class about spies, isn't he? And he's talking about spies and things. So I'm wondering, and plus you keep seeing that border crossing again and again. They keep returning to it. So I'm wondering, in the case of, if Denham Elliott's being investigated because the US military might think he's a spy, so does that then put shade on Teresa Russell's character? So is she a spy of some sort? So there's a lot of stuff like that, again, which is never just kind of thrown into the mix. And because the thing with Nicholas Roeg is Nicholas Roeg is not the kind of filmmaker who puts things in his films for no reason, right?
Right.
So there's a reason that there's a border crossing, because there's no reason for that border crossing to be there. You could have set the entire film in Vienna.
Sure. Right.
And you wouldn't have had to go to the trouble of that. So there's a reason it's there, I think. Or the screenwriter Yael Udoff, maybe he knows why, but Anyway, yes, so it's basically it's a study of a relationship, right? It's a study of a relationship, and it's a study all the things that go along with it, right? Jealousy, possessiveness, love, nature of what is love, men and women, all that kind of stuff, and it kind of builds to a pretty shocking. There's a pretty shocking reveal, I guess, towards the end, and especially if you start thinking about. I'm going to dance around this a little. You can spoil it if you want, as long as you warn people if you're going to do it. But I'm going to try and dance about it a little bit. I was going to say that if the thing that Art Garfunkel believes that he did, like that's even darker again, right? What he actually did was, of course, a horrible act. But if
I think by dancing around it, you're just making it very convoluted and hard
okay,
to discuss. I think just spoil it. Just say spoil
okay, all
it.
right, all right. So, okay, spoilers. We find out that he raped Teresa Russell's character after she's OD'd, right? And is dying as well until spoilers, she is actually revived, it seems. But the way I read it, and again, this is open to interpretation, I suppose, is Art Garfunkel's character thinks she's dead, right? So he's committing, in his mind, he is committing an act of necrophilia as well.
Right.
Actually, okay. But he kind of.
Did he think she was dead or just dying?
I think he thought she was dead. And finally, she's all to himself, right?
Right.
He's finally got her all to himself.
He can control her.
Yeah.
Again, like it's all about control.
Sparks. Yeah.
Like Sparks, yeah.
I mean, it's even darker than where that film, but it's a very different film. But
yeah.
But it's definitely thematically very similar.
Right.
Yeah, so that's it, that is I mean, I don't know, that's about it, right? I suppose plot wise, I think
yeah, I mean, I was reading like the sometimes when a movie like this tends to be very kind of like chronologically all over the place and
it's fragmented.
A lot of things like, oh, what's going on there. Sometimes I like to go and just read like an actual plot synopsis. And so I actually like read the plot synopsis for this, and because it just makes it helps clarify things in your mind and some of that, right? Which you think and you're like, wait, what is that? And then it helps you. So according to this plot synopsis, so there's one scene. He's stalking her, right? He stalks her for a while, because he likes how she's sort of free spirited and kind of like promiscuous and stuff like that. But then he starts to get angry with it, and he stalks her for a while. Remember, there's some parts where he's kind of walking over.
I mean, there's a few.
And then after that, there's actually a scene where he confronts her about her marriage.
Right.
Right. And so they are married. And so she says in that scene that they're just platonic and that they're not in love. And then it says after that, he begins researching into the guy's past. That it was almost that he wasn't necessarily working for anyone, but that he was doing it because he wanted to know.
Oh, okay. So he might have pulled some strings and
some strings or something.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, like I said, it's not necessarily that complicated as a plot, but if you start thinking about the timeline, yes, it could be. You could move it around, right? Plus, as well, throw into that as well Nicholas Roeg's, famously kind of editing choices and things.
That's also the scene where he goes to ask about how to get a divorce.
Yes, yeah.
Right, and so and that's because she's married and he wants her to get a divorce from him so that they can be together. So that's why that was about. So that's also more proof that they must have been married.
No. What I mean is, when I say I don't know if they were married or not, what I mean is, I think there's no doubt technically they're married, but I'm wondering if it's either a marriage of convenience
Well, yeah, I
for
mean,
good
I
reason.
think he lived in a different country, right? He lived across the
Yeah,
border, right? So
or it's a
obviously there was,
yeah, or it's a cover for something, or it's just a marriage that didn't work. And the Denim
right.
Elliot character is different. His response is different from Art Garfunkel in so much he's just like, okay, I just let, because there's that scene where he even takes her to the border
uh,
and she leaves him, right?
right.
And he
Yeah.
allows her to leave. He clearly
But of
doesn't
course,
want
he was a
her.
real asshole to her. That I mean,
Yeah, but
yeah,
he clearly
yeah.
doesn't want her to leave, but he realizes, well, again, this is another thing that could have, that's not in the film, but could be backstory, is he could, the same exact thing that happened, her free spiritedness, her character turned him into this possessive asshole, but at just the right moment, he decided to let her go, whereas
Yeah.
the Art Carfunkel character did. There's all sorts of interesting.
Sure, yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
what. So the reason I chose this film actually, so I saw this film a long time ago, and I've seen it a couple of times since then. And every time I've seen this film, um, it's increased in interest for me, which is rare. It's like one of those things. The
Mm.
first time I saw it, I thought, "Oh, that's pretty good," but there was a lot of stuff I couldn't get. I saw it when I was very young, and I hadn't had much experience in relationship. And then the more you see it, it's just like. And this time watching it, I couldn't tell you exactly why, but I found it fascinating, just
Mm.
fascinating. Even if I don't quite, there's something about this film that I just find there's something about it that is, and I will watch it again. This isn't a, it's not given up all its secrets to me yet. This film,
Right.
I feel there's more uh, to get from it. Tell me how you got on then with what I'm assuming was your first watch of Bad Timing.
Yeah, first watch. Yeah, I mean, I liked it too. I um I found myself finding it hard to get past the casting of Art Garfunkel, to be honest. But
Oh,
I
really?
just I just found it too just sort of it was so strong of a choice that I found it hard to not think about it through the entire movie. Like
Interesting.
why of all the actors they could have done, why would they have chosen Art Garfunkel for this role? And then like I mean, he himself is not a particularly handsome or charismatic kind of guy in this movie. So I don't know. I just felt I just thought it was an odd choice the whole time. He didn't do a particularly bad job.
I think he's good. I think he's quite good.
I think he was fine with what he did, but it just felt like a very strange casting choice to me that stood out so much that it actually sort of distracted me from the movie a little bit. So um, I'm
Hmm.
not really sure why that was, but yeah, it just because he's just not known for this type of thing. You know what I mean? So it's um, yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
have to
know.
admit, I got over it pretty quick. I don't know why. Maybe just because saw it uh, a long time ago, so maybe I didn't have that much. I didn't know that much about Art Garfunkel. So from the beginning, this has been part of Art
Right.
Garfunkel's persona for me or something.
But I guess I felt like the character really needed to be more of like a player, I guess. You know,
Hmm.
he's kind of like a player, like charismatic kind of playboy kind of thing. But he
Really?
doesn't really look like that kind of person. You know, he's still kind of funny looking with that big hair and I don't know, it was a bit of like it was a bit of a stretch for me that he
Oh,
was that guy,
I
you
don't know
know?
about that. I know what you mean from my point of view, but I think something that's easy to forget about Art Garfunkel, I think, is oddly enough, I think Art Garfunkel was a bit of a sex symbol.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he's one of them. I agree with he's not exactly your image of, but I think he did have, there was something about Art Garfunkel that a certain type of woman really went for. He does have a sort of sex appeal. Um,
Okay.
I'm trying to think of some other. There's some other people who have that slight weird thing going on as well, where it's not your traditional, handsome or good looking or what you'd think, but yeah, he belongs in that category of. I think he's probably more fanciable than you might think.
Okay. I mean, I'm not saying that he's ugly necessarily, but just that he doesn't really fit my image of what that kind of guy would be.
No,
You know what I
no.
mean?
So
So
I'm
yeah.
not. I'm not saying that.
So
I'm not saying not he's just ugly. I'm saying he does have a strong charisma, like a magnetism,
Sure.
kind of sexual
Okay.
magnetism.
Yeah.
There's
I
something.
thought he was okay, considering he's not really an actor. But I don't know. I just felt it a little bit distracting for me, just the stunt casting part of it. So, but yeah, I liked the movie. I thought it was all well done. I thought it was well plotted and paced, and it was engrossing. You know, you were definitely, you know, it
Hmm.
was. I wouldn't go so far as to say it was fascinating as you, but it was only my first watch. So maybe if I watched it again, it would be more interesting as it goes
You
along.
think you would watch it again?
Yeah, I'd watch it again. It wasn't, yeah, a hard watch or anything like that. But I did appreciate as we were watching it how dark it got comparison
Hmm.
to also Ruby Sparks, with that it was got a very good companion piece in terms of like the, you know, male power and control of the woman, and you know, it's, yeah, like very similar themes,
Hmm.
right? And yeah, it just expressed in different ways, I guess, right? So um
The element that I found interesting this time, which I hadn't really picked up on before, oddly enough, this time watching it, I was thinking, how come I never picked up on that before? Because it's quite overt, like towards the end, there is quite how fascinated by Art Garfunkel Harvey Keitel's character is.
yeah, that was the other thing,
He's
is I
almost
also thought,
sympathetic, like he's really,
yeah,
he seems like because you think he's just turning on that because he wants a confession, right? You think he just wants a
right.
confession or whatever. But this time watching it, I really felt that Harvey Keitel was relating to Art Garfunkel's
Oh,
character.
really?
I really felt he actually
You
did
get that?
want, like he again, in the past I just thought he was trying to get confession, but this time I felt as if he was really genuinely bonding with him,
Mm.
which I'd never considered before. But that I found that element quite fascinating as well this time. I'd never seen that.
Yeah, I didn't get that element, but maybe on my third watch I'll get it right. But
Right.
but I also thought Harvey Keitel was a little bit miscast too. I don't know,
Okay.
I love Harvey Keitel, but he just was really odd in this role with his mullet and his attempt at sort of an accent. I don't know what he was trying to do with his accent. Was he doing an accent, or was he? It was
Yeah,
just
I
kind of
don't know.
mumbling
I don't
everything.
know.
I
I
don't know
think
what
he
he
was
was
doing
doing.
something. He was cast at the last minute as well. I don't know who he replaced, but he replaced someone. I think he only came on board like a week before filming or something. So
Yeah,
obviously he wasn't the first choice. But and I find this period of Harvey Keitel's career fascinating as well, when he was doing films in Europe and stuff. And you know, it
uh,
is because the back in the 90s when Pulp Fiction came out, they would always compare like the trajectories of Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro, right? So they kind of start off on an equal footing, Mean Streets. Robert De Niro is the one who has the stellar career during the 80s and things, and then starts kind of, you know, being in less interesting than that. And Harvey Keitel seems to have been off in the wilderness, like doing films around the world. And then in the 90s, it's his time to be the kind of.
right.
So yeah, this period, I always interested to see Harvey Keitel pop up in things in the 70s and the
Mm,
80s, because he made
mm.
some very interesting choices, right? He was in some.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, again, kind of like between him and Art Garfunkel, I just thought the casting of both those kind of parts brought me out of the action a little bit. Unfortunately, I thought so. That, yeah, was
How familiar are you with Teresa Russell?
not as much. She looked really familiar, but I looked up her filmography and I couldn't place
Okay.
where I knew her from.
So
So,
her Nicholas Roeg kind of hooked up on this film as well, right?
right.
So
Yeah. They married apparently
they
afterwards, right?
married and they
So,
made a whole bunch of films together. And this is the start of their relationship, which is kind of fascinating. She's really interesting as well, because I think she's really good in this film, but she's one of those peculiar actresses who seems to have this ability of, depending on, I don't know if it's the director or the material, or she can be astoundingly good, or
uh,
she can be awful, and
uh,
sometimes like in the same film. So
yeah, sure.
her and Nicholas Roeg made together after this. I was looking as well, actually. This run of films Nicholas Roeg has is astonishing. So amazing cinematographer, turns director, straight out the gate. He co-directs Performance, right? His Performance, Walkabout, Don't Look Now, which we talked about before on the show, The Man Who Fell to Earth, and then this is like, wow, it's like the banger after banger for me, at least.
Right.
And then they do this film called Eureka, which is a really interesting film. We're halfway through the film, turns into like a courtroom drama, and the scenes with Teresa Russell in the courtroom are just like, wow, what's she doing? Like, what? And then the rest of the film, she's saying, and then again, it's an odd film. It's a very good film. It's an interesting film, but it's just it's a lot more all over the place than Bad Timing, for example.
Right.
But yeah, so I always found her really quite interesting, especially as muse to Nicholas Roeg.
Right.
The other thing that jumped out at me as well, and actually is going to set up my viewing for tonight, oddly enough. So there's a scene where she's reading Paul Bowles' The Sheltering Sky, right? And then there's scenes when they're in North Africa, right? They go to North Africa, they go to either Morocco or Tangier or something. So I don't think that's not a coincidence. And it just reminded me that I've never actually seen, I've read the book, but have you seen The Sheltering Sky, the Delucci film based on I've never seen it, and I thought, oh, I love the book, so I grabbed a copy. So I'm actually gonna watch Sheltering Sky tonight. Art Garfunkel as well, weird kind of real life imitating art thing. His girlfriend at the time, Laurie Bird, committed suicide while he was making this film.
While he was making this movie, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, back in New York, and I think it was an overdose as well, Valium or something. So that's an odd.
That was one thing I was a little confused about as well. I mean, obviously I'm not a doctor and stuff, but I would think that if you overdose on drugs, that why is a tracheotomy the way that you would fix that? Like, what is the relationship between those two? Wouldn't you do a stomach pump or transfusion or something? Like, what is the trachea? What is the
I'm
tracheus?
guessing it must be inflammation of. So even if you did the stomach pump, it wouldn't be able to come out, right? So tracheotomy is just to open it all up here, right? So it must be just so inflamed or something.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was like, why are they operating on her throat? I didn't understand that part, but okay. Again, I'm not up on my medical dramas, I guess. So, but yeah, I do appreciate more the Ruby Sparks that he didn't get his happy ending at the end of this one.
Right. No.
Yeah. So yeah, it's at the very end. He sees her kind of just like Ruby Sparks. He comes across her again at the end after a period of absence, and he reaches out to her. And then Ruby Sparks, he kind of gets to have a second chance. And here, this one, she like gives him the stink eye and walks away. Right. So
yeah.
So
it's interesting. It raises a lot of questions just in terms of. Was she ever made aware of the rape of her corpse, or does she not know about that? I was wondering that as well after watching it. Do you think she knows? Was she told?
Well, I think if she didn't know, she probably would have said hello to him at the very least. I feel like
I don't know if she would have. I don't know if she would have.
Like the coldness was because she knew everything. She was told everything.
I guess he'll never know, right? As well, that's the thing. So that's kind of.
What's that?
I guess he'll never know as well, right? Which is
he'll never know. Yes, that's true. Yeah, but that was my guess. Was that based on the ghosting of him or the cold shoulder she gave him? That is because I know everything that you did to me, and so go fuck yourself. You
know. No, fascinating film and endlessly debatable as well. I can imagine rewatching this film again, like in 10 years, and talking about it again, and we'd have different. Rank didn't like it. The studio that made it, they disowned it immediately, famously calling it a sick film made by sick people for sick people. So,
so I was like, I read that too, and I was like, oh, that's why Clive chose it, because it was made for him.
Well, it's not often that a studio totally disowns a film, right? On the grounds of, I don't know, morality or something. But actually, they did. Oddly, I never thought about this, but Nicholas Roeg's first film performance, actually, Warner Brothers executives famously didn't like. There's a famous quote from, there's like a scene in performance where Mick Jagger's in the bath with, I think it's Anita Pallenberg, some other girls they're having a bath, and some Warner executive apparently said, "Even the bath water is dirty."
But his his first movie performance has Mick Jagger in it?
Have you not seen Performance?
No. So
Oh.
does he just like cast musicians as or
Man Who Fell to
singers
Earth,
as
David Bowie.
yeah? I haven't
Yeah.
seen that one either. So yeah, so
Really?
yeah. I haven't seen either movie.
Okay. You have some Nicholas Rogue homework to do, clearly.
So is that just what he does? He just casts singers as actors?
Well, he did.
Is
I'm
that his
thinking
thing?
beyond that into the 80s and 90s. I'm wondering if he did. But certainly those are the three big ones, I suppose. Yeah,
Big
Mick
ones, yeah.
Jagger, David Bowie, and Art Garfunkel. I'm surprised. I can see why you might not have caught up with Performance yet, but I had assumed you had seen The Man Who Fell to Earth.
No, I haven't seen that
Oh,
one.
okay. There's that. A couple of great films await you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'll be on my
it's always good.
list.
Yeah. Okay, doc. Then right, me and Ron are off to do some smooching, and maybe later on in the evening I'll get my typewriter out and type things like yeah, I don't know. Ron can now speak Spanish. Take it away.
Hola. Hola.
This
Y
is-
uno, dos,
this
tres,
is
cuatro, cinco,
uncanny.
seis.
Un, dos, tres,
Buenos
cuatro.
días.
Um,
Gracias.
there we go. See you
I don't
then.
know why I have to use my hand every time I speak.
Yeah.
Gracias.
You
Uno,
can
dos,
just
tres.
speak English. Actually, you can do it in Italian.
Hola.
Yes, you can speak any
Señorita.
language.
Dos cervezas, por favor.
What's I love you?
I don't know. Mi amor. No, that's Spanish. That's Italian. I don't know. Oh, is it te amo? Is it te amo? That sounds
Yeah,
familiar.
you
I don't know.
too, Ron.
Te amo. Maybe.